Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our morning devotions. Good to see everybody again. This is episode 160, and we're in 1 Samuel 21. I posted the whole chapter, it's 15 verses. Very interesting material here. A lot of familiar story in this portion of scripture that saints are usually acquainted with, but let's just hit the high points here of these 15 verses. The first one, verses 1 through 6, have to deal with David eating the showbread, which some people think that this is a big deal, but I'm just going to say that when you consider the showbread, which is it's hollowed bread, it's in the holy place. The priest would eat it, but remember the showbread, all of it wasn't eaten, and there was here's the question: what do you do with the old showbread before you bake more and put it in there? What do you do? You can give it away. So there's nothing contrary to the law here in giving this showbread to the men, especially when it says in the last part here in verse 6, it says so the priest gave him hallowed bread, for it was for there was no bread there but the showbread that was taken from before the Lord to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. They gave them the bread that they were going to pitch out because they were replacing the showbread with new bread. Okay, we'll look at that. But there's all this going on about this, and so there's no breaking the law here, is what I'm trying to say. And Christ addresses this in the New Testament. The next thing is in verses 7 through 9. And this is when we are introduced to Doeg, which is going to be in the next chapter. He is a murderer. He is a slaughterer of the priest there in Nob. And he thinks he's going to do Saul a favor by killing off all these men because they assisted David in this. Of course, the men here, the priests, have no idea that Saul and David are at odds with one another. They just figure that he's out on a mission for the king. So why would helping someone that's on a mission for the king be something that they shouldn't do? All right, that's the mentality of the priest. There's no big deal, except little do they know that Saul is trying to kill him, and Doeg is going to facilitate the king's anger in killing all these priests. That's in the next chapter. And then you have verses 10 through, one other reference here in verse 9 that it's interesting that they have Goliath's sword there with the priests, and so they gave Goliath's sword to David. And then in verses 10 through 15, this is some people think that this is not wise on David's part, but where is he going to go? So where he initially goes is into the city of Achish, the king of Achish in the city of Gath, and so he goes to hide out among the Philistines, and we'll look at that. And this is where he feigns madness, which some say, well, he got himself in a jam. But you see, David he is a warrior's warrior. He's going to do whatever he can to get out of this, and he figured this would work, and by the grace of God, it did. So let's look at the passage here. It's just 15 verses, unlike some of the passages that we've been reading. They're up in the 30s and 40s. It says, and when then came David to Nob to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid of the meeting of David, and said unto him, why art thou alone, and no man with thee? This isn't right, David, because if you're an ambassador for the king, why are you alone? I mean, there should be an entourage with you, right? So you're all by yourself? What's going on here? It says, and David said unto Ahimelech the priest, the king hath commanded me a business, and hath said to me, let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee. That is, I am on a secret mission. Nobody knows where I am. Nobody's supposed to know where I am. That's why I'm by myself, all right, as far as royal attendants. And what I have commanded thee, and I have appointed my servants to such and such a place. So he said, that's why I'm not here like with royal support, okay, with these men. Now, therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves. Give me 5 loaves of bread in mine hand. What there is present. He just says, we're hungry. We need food. Okay, that's all he's saying. What do you got? David says, I need some bread. What do you got? And it says, and the priest answered David and said, there is no common bread under mine hand. That is, there's nothing in the cupboard. We don't have anything in the cupboard. But there is hallowed bread. And then that is in the tabernacle, there's hallowed bread. In the holy place, there's bread. All right. This bread is about ready to be replaced. All right. So Ahimelech here is saying, we can work this out. This is going to work perfectly. I'm about ready to replace the bread in the holy place, and you need it so you can eat the bread that's been in there. And I don't know, I didn't look up how long they keep it, all right, before they replace it. But it was time to be replaced. And so you can eat the replaced bread, all right, well, because we're baking warm bread. Isn't that interesting? They're going to bake warm bread and put it in the tabernacle, all right? So the priests are going to be able to eat, fresh bread. But you guys can eat the stuff that's been in there for I don't know how long. Let's say it's been in there for a week. Okay, you can eat that stuff. All right, that's what's going on here. And the showbread, it is hallowed in that it was unto the Lord. But just think for a minute, in a very practical way, this hallowed bread was only going to be good for a while, and then it has to be replaced. That is, the same bread that when it's fresh is hallowed, but if you let that bread sit in there and get rotten, okay, and get moldy, that would be a dishonor to God by not addressing the needs of the tabernacle. The same thing is by not replenishing the oil in the candelabra or the incense on the altar of incense. I mean, all of these things, as hallowed as they are, all need to be replaced. It's the same thing as the sacrifices that were made. One was not enough. The sacrifices were going up from the brazen altar 24/7, day and night before the Lord, as people brought sacrifices for the sins that they have committed. Same thing of the bread, same thing of the oil, same thing of the incense. All of these things all have to be replenished over and over and over again. It's the nature of existence as it applies to the Old Testament Levitical system. So we call it hallowed bread, and it is hallowed bread, but it comes to the place that the same bread that at one time was hallowed bread is just now getting pretty stale, and it needs to be replaced. Now, that's not generally the way we speak of these things, but this is the reality of what's happening in the tabernacle, all right? It's not functioning by way of a miracle like Aaron's rod that budded in the Ark of the Covenant and the golden bowl of manna and all of that. That's not what's happening here. These are very practical things that the priests have to care for on a daily basis. So Ahimelech's putting two and two together. We're going to replace the bread anyway. You can have what we're taking out of the holy place. Or that's what we're going to do for you, David. And it says, and then they ask these questions. He says, there's hallowed bread if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. And this is like, when they say this, I read this and I read it like the Jerusalem Council, I mean, about when it comes, they're having a problem with Paul ministering to the Gentiles. And then he gives a list of things like they just like made up, I mean, to say, and make sure, what is it, keep themselves from idols. I mean, I'm not going to look at it, but they made up a list. But the fact of the matter is none of it bore on the situation. The fact is the Gentiles can get saved without keeping the law because it's by grace through faith alone. And what the Apostle Paul is doing is trying to broaden the perspective of the in the Jewish church about their Jewish roots, because these people that he's leading to the Lord have no religious roots. All they know is that Christ died for them, and they believe he died on the cross for them, but they have no idea when it comes to Paul planting churches in the Gentile nations, anything about this Jewish tradition. So they add all this Jewish stuff that, all right, but it doesn't really bear on the redemptive element of what Paul's doing in reaching the Gentiles for the gospel. Same thing here. He says, as long as the men have kept themselves at least from women, because he's got this rabble running with them. I mean, they're a remarkable bunch that are following David. And David answered the priest and said unto him, of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days. Since I came out, the vessels of the young men are holy. That is, they haven't involved themselves with women. And the bread is in a manner common. See, the bread is in a manner common, yea, though it were sanctified this day in the vessel. In a manner, it is common. And that's consistent with what the priest is going to do here. And it says, so the priest gave him hallowed bread, which is hallowed, but it's going to be replaced, what we see here. For there was no bread, there was but the showbread. So there's nothing else to feed David here, all right, and his men as they're trying to escape from Saul. they're trying to get away because Saul is going to come after him. All right, and it says there was no bread there but the showbread that was taken from before the Lord, that it was taken out of the holy place of the tabernacle. All right, and to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. So it's taken out and replaced, which is a normal operating procedure of the tabernacle. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what this is about. So when he takes it out, they can either eat warm bread or they can eat stale bread. They just gave the bread that had been in there for a while, and they gave it to David and his men. That's what this is all about, okay? And then you have this. That's the first section. The next section is in verses 7 to 9. And you want to remember this guy's name because he is one of the most cruel, wicked men in all the Bible. His name is Doeg. He's an Edomite. He's not an Israeli. He's not a Philistine. He's an Edomite. All right. It says, now a certain man of the servants of Saul, and there it is. He's going to betray David, and he's going to betray the priest because he is a friend of Saul. You know, I've been making this contrast between if you want to be a friend of Saul or you want to be a friend of David and Jonathan. This is what friends of Saul do. So for those that have been with me for our devotions, and we've been making that contrast, here's what a friend of Saul does, and see if you think now you should side with the king. Okay, because here's somebody that the king and they're friends. It says, now there was a certain man of the servants of Saul, he served Saul, was there that day, detained before the Lord, and so he's just in the proximity for whatever reason. The Lord made sure he was there. Now listen to this. It says, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chiefest of the herdmen that belonged to Saul. All right. So the chiefest of the herdmen that belonged to Saul, his name is Doeg the Edomite. He is a lower rung bureaucrat. That's all he is. He is the head of the herdsman. He takes care of cattle. So he's the head herdsman, all right, and it may involve other animals, but he takes care of animals. So he's the head of the taking care of animal group, all right. He is a servant of Saul, but he is a bottom of the rung Israeli government bureaucrat. That's all he is. And he's gonna find some way that he thinks is gonna promote himself. And that's in the next chapter. And this whole story in the next chapter is an absolute atrocity. This is another one of those portions of Scripture they're going to look at, Lord willing, tomorrow, that you'll say, wow, what a passage of Scripture that God includes in the Bible. Because Saul hates David so much that he hates equally as much anyone that will aid David, even if they don't know that David is an enemy or considered by Saul his enemy. I mean, this is what we're going to see tomorrow is just the slaughter of the innocent. Anyway, but Doeg is there. Don't forget this guy's name. And David said unto Ahimelech, that is to the priest, and is there not here under thine hand a spear or a sword? Because he gets out, he's running for his life. He doesn't have a weapon with him. He says, for I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste, which is not, of course, true. The haste part it is, but he's not doing the king's business. He's running, all right? And the priest said, listen to this, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, that gigantic sword that you used to cut off his head? He said, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah? Behold, it is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. I have it. I wrapped it up. I saved it. I got it right here, David. Isn't this interesting? He says, if thou wilt take that, take it. If you need a weapon, take Goliath's sword. And David says this, for there is no other save that here. I mean, that's the only weapon we have here, which is something else to be reminded of in the next chapter, that when Doeg goes in and slaughters these guys, they're all unarmed. I mean, this is just an absolute atrocity. This is like bombing civilians, all right? I mean the innocent. It says, let me keep going here. For if thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, there is none like that, give it me. Yeah, you're right. There's nothing like that. All right, nothing. That's amazing. And then it says this in verse 10, because he's not staying there, so now he's got some food. Verse 10, and David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul and went to Achish, the king of Gath. There's the question right there in that. Where are you going to go? If you got to get out of Israel, where are you going to go to find some security? And I think he's just trying to hide out in a city. He's gone to one of the gigantic walled Philistine cities. I mean, I can imagine he's got a hood over his head. He's trying to hide out in the crowd. He's going into a metropolitan area to just hang out and mingle with the people, because I think, first of all, Saul isn't going to come to Gath. I mean, there's no way that's going to happen. And I don't think Saul would think that he would go to Gath anyway, because Gath is a Philistine city. And nobody there, he's figured, in Gath is looking for him, all right? Nobody's expecting to see David in the crowd at Gath, and that was his big mistake right there. It says, he said, and the servants of Achish said to Achish, because he's come into the city, but he can't hide out because this guy is a national hero. Everybody knows him. It's like he's like very, very famous. People were going, oh, is that David? I mean, what's he doing here? My eyes must be kidding, because what in the world is he doing here in Gath? These Philistines, they're going, I mean, and then, but the servants, I mean, it's just like in Jericho when they came up to Rahab the harlot and they said, we know the spies are here. I mean, they got people watching all the time. I mean, this is a Philistine city. These are the police, all right? And the people. And they said, listen, Achish, David is in town. He said, the servants of Achish said unto him, is not this David the king of the land? Isn't he just down on the corner? Did they not sing one to another him in dances, saying, Saul hath killed his thousands and David his 10,000s? They know the song. I mean, everybody was singing this song. He's in town, Achish. And David laid up these words in his heart. That is, he overheard what was going on. He overheard this. I mean, this is the guy. And was sore afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. They know I'm here, and I am way behind enemy lines. Way. I am inside a walled city, one of the major cities of the Philistine Empire. They have found me out, and the king, it's just been it's been reported to him by his agents that I'm here, and David is going, I am in such trouble. What in the world? How am I going to get out of this? I cannot fight my way out of this. He cannot fight his way out of this. He is in the midst of a Philistine city by virtue of numbers. He might kill the first 20, but the next 100 are going to take him, right? I mean, this is the situation he's finding himself, because he's hiding out among the Philistines. And so this is what you get in verse 13. We have to argue that because the Spirit of the Lord had not departed from him, all right, that this is part of how he survived being in terrible, terrible straits. He just jumped from the frying pan that is from Saul chasing him into the fire that Achish is going to kill him now. It says, and he changed his behavior before them. He changed everything about himself. All right? He has to be an entirely different man. And that is what he's going to do. He has the capacity. He's given the capacity to become an entirely a different man. That's what David does. He says, and he changed his behavior before them and feigned himself. That is, he made like this. He's acting. He feigned this. All right? It's not true, but he acts this way. He feigned himself mad in their hands. Like he is a madman, like he's crazy. David now starts acting like he's a madman and he's crazy. And to sell this, he scratches on the doors of wherever they are. It says, and scrabbled on the doors of the gate, and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. And he's spitting and drooling into his beard. So he's scratching on the gate. He's acting like a madman. He's drooling, he's spitting, and the spit is filling up his beard, and it's dripping down, and he's acting like a wild man. I mean, he's just going, ah, right? Okay, ah! This is David. The king of Israel, because he's in a jam. He's throwing out any sense of propriety. You don't want to see any propriety for a crazy man. If he shows any way that he's a distinguished person, he's an honorable person, he's a reasonable person, he's a rational person, if he shows any kind of self-control at all, they're going to say, yeah, this is David, and that's the end of him. All right? That'll be the end of him. I mean, we know what they did to Samson. They got him. All right? So he's acting like a madman. His entire countenance has changed. His visage has changed. His behavior changes. He's scratching on the doors of the or on the gate. The spittle is running down through his beard like he can't control what's coming out of his mouth. There's David. All right? It's interesting here. When you're in a jam, the things you might do to get out of it, I think one thing we want to learn here is never say you would never do that. Well, I would never do that. I have too much self-respect. David didn't. Not right then. He's either going to die or he's got to give up every lick of self-respect he ever had. All right? And feign act like a madman. And then this is what happens in verse 14. Then said Achish unto his servants. He's talking to his servants now. He says, lo, look, see? See, the man is mad. What are you talking about? He says, wherefore have ye brought him to me? I'm the king. You're wasting my time. Who was right? The servants or Achish? His servants were. And they were going, King, trust me, this is him. And the king's going, he's mad. Why are you bothering me? I got stuff to do today. Whatever I'm doing as the king, all right? I mean, you're just wasting my time because can't you see this guy's a madman? He's out of his mind. This isn't David. And I can just imagine the servants are going, wait, hang in there, king. This is the guy. We got him. No, he doesn't do it. He said, have I need of madmen? Do I need madmen? The king says, that ye have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence. Do I need guys like this? No, I need warriors, not guys that are drooling and spitting in their beards, scratching on the wall and acting like they're crazy. He said, have I need of madmen, that ye have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? He says, there's no way. He says, and they let him go. I don't know what happened after that, but they don't arrest him. And that's why you get in verse 22, and David therefore departed thence and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And that's how the next chapter begins. He escaped because he was acting like a madman. One of the great passages in Scripture. And then we could all make our moral judgments about whether he should have been there in the first place. How he told the priest these half-truths about why he was there. Whether, undoubtedly, I mean, we know that in the end, the fact that he was there at all got him all in trouble. I mean, because Doeg was there. I mean, but I think tomorrow there's just such a lesson to learn that helping people that are on the other side of a tyrant will put you in harm's way. It puts you in harm's way as well. If the Jews were coming and we were in Germany, and you're going to hide the Jews as a Christian, knowing full well that they're not considered people, I mean, you would be on the edge of forfeiting your own life because you were protecting God's chosen people during the time of the Holocaust. And a lot of people, of course, wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, because when you help people that are in trouble, you place yourself in harm's way, even though there's nothing directly pointed at you. And that's what's going to happen to Ahimelech here and all the priests of Nob and their families, their wives and their kids. That's tomorrow. Because of Doeg, the Edomite, the head of Saul's herdmen, this cut-rate, bottom-tier bureaucrat. He's nobody, but he's given the authority of the king, and he's going to just slaughter people, slaughter the innocent. That's tomorrow. All right. Well, that is 1 Samuel 21. I hope that was a little helpful on the showbread, that was not a big deal. the idea that he got Goliath's sword, that's very cool. And we're introduced to Doeg in verse 7. And then the story about he ends up behind enemy lines. This happens to him again. He's going to be on the side of the Philistine army. And then the other Philistine commanders are going to say, I don't think we want him fighting with us. You better send him home because you don't know which side David is really on. There's a lot of this going on. So this is his first foray into hiding out among the Philistines, and it doesn't go well. All right. Okay. Well, Lord bless you. You have a great day. You have to love the Bible. I was telling my pastor, I tell everybody that my son and I were talking the other night. The reason people get confounded about things in life, so much of it is because they're just not familiar with, and I'm not even talking about theology. They're not familiar with the stories in the Bible and how it was managed and how God got people through things. Just knowing the content of the Bible without systematizing it will give you a whole nother outlook on life. And people ask questions all the time and they wonder about this and that. It's as if they are functioning from a position of just not knowing what's in the Bible. And then they have all these dilemmas because if you just read it, you would know how in the past these things were managed. So I trust this morning devotion at least helps a little, lends itself to a greater understanding of what's in here we're in the Old Testament, what's in the Bible. All right. Well, got to enjoy it. Got to love it. Okay. All right. And the Lord bless you. And Lord willing, we'll see everybody tomorrow. All right. Have a great day. We'll see you. Bye.